All right, so after weeks of suspense, our right-wing reactionary Supreme Court has officially decided to overturn Roe v. Wade here in the United States, which will effectively allow conservative states all across the country to outlaw abortion. So here from the AP, they say Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, and they include states that can ban abortion. So a little bit of details here. They say the Supreme Court on Friday ended constitutional protections for abortion that had stood in America for nearly a half century. The decision by the court's conservative majority overturned the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling and is expected to lead to abortion bans in roughly half of the states. And the ruling, unthinkable just a few years ago, I don't think that it was really unthinkable, was the culmination of decades of efforts by abortion opponents. Again, if it's the culmination of decades of efforts by a lot of these political organizations and politicians, then it's really not that unthinkable. This was entirely predictable, but they said they made possible by an emboldened right side of the court that has been fortified by 3 appointees of former President Donald Trump. And they say both sides predicted the fight over abortion would continue in state capitals and in Washington. And Justice Clarence Thomas, part of Friday's majority, called on the court to overturn other high court rulings protecting same-sex marriage, gay sex, and the use of contraceptives. So this is not even going to be the end of this. This right-wing fascist movement within the United States is going to continue eroding our fundamental rights and pushing us in the exact opposite direction. But this is basically just the first of a long line of further court rulings that we can expect in the future to come. But they continue saying the ruling came more than a month after the stunning leak of a draft opinion by Justice Samuel Alito indicating the court was prepared to take this momentous step. And it puts the court at odds with a majority of Americans who favored preserving Roe, according to opinion polls. And this has been literally consistent throughout the entire history since Roe v. Wade was made as a decision. But they continue saying Alito, in the final opinion issued Friday, wrote that Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the 1992 decision that reaffirmed the right to abortion, were wrong the days that they were decided and must be overturned. And they continue saying joining Alito were Thomas and Justice Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. The latter 3 justices, obviously Trump appointees. And they say Thomas first voted to overrule Roe v. Wade 30 years ago. And the 4 justices would have left Roe and Casey in place. And for the 4 justices, they're talking about Justice John Roberts. But obviously still, the vote was still 6-3 to uphold the Mississippi law that was bringing this challenge. But Chief Justice John Roberts didn't join his conservative colleagues in overturning Roe. He wrote that there was no need to overturn the broad precedents to rule in Mississippi's favor. And Justices Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, obviously the diminished liberal wing of the court, were in dissent, and they wrote their little, dissent piece here. But what does that honestly matter at this point? But finally, they finish off here saying the ruling is expected to disproportionately affect minority women, of course, who already face limited access to healthcare, according to statistics analyzed by the Associated Press. And you know who is not going to be affected by this? The many wives and mistresses of Republican politicians who are simply going to be able to pay for them to go into democratically held states that do have abortion rights. So, I mean, at the end of the day, again, this isn't about protecting life. It is the exact opposite of that. Getting rid of Roe v. Wade and the protections for abortion rights does not actually make it so that you significantly reduce the amount of abortions. All you're going to do is make it much more dangerous for women to get abortions in the first place, and also just lead to like a completely insane culture within our society where in some conservative states they're, straight up trying to throw people in prison for attempting to get abortions, or make it so that doctors are able to get sued if they even help women with miscarriages and things like that. So again, this is just absolutely fucking crazy. It's not something that is even remotely close to supported by the majority of the country, but this is something that is going to be effectively put in place in states all around the country in the coming weeks and months, if not immediately in some cases, because as pointed out here by Fast Company, there have been conservative lawmakers in a number of states that have been preparing for this moment for decades in some cases. And according to data from the Gut Mature Institute, a nonprofit that tracks access to reproductive health care, 13 states have so-called trigger laws in effect that will ban most abortions immediately. And those states are as follows. You got Arkansas, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. And they say, in addition, the Institute wrote in a blog post earlier this month that another 13 states are expected to ban abortion pretty quickly after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, meaning more than half of U.S. states could have an abortion ban in place very soon. So again, this isn't something that's just going to be isolated to certain specific corners of the country. This is something that could be taking over like half of states within the country. So this is not something where you're just going to be able to, easily move about to be able to avoid this. Here's another map from Planned Parenthood that kind of puts it in perspective. I mean, Jesus Christ, the entire southern United States, a lot of these other conservative states as well, there's some nuanced differences between the types of abortion bans that they're doing. Some of them want to ban it from the moment of conception. Some want to ban it at like 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks. But really with this ruling on overturning Roe v. Wade, they're going to be able to go absolutely buck wild with it and go as far as their, heart's desire in this instance. But, this is the Republican Party that we have expected to, do this type of thing for, again, decades and decades in this country. There has been ample time for Democrats to try to pass protections for Roe v. Wade at the federal level through legislation. They have repeatedly refused to do that. We're going to touch on a couple examples of that here in a minute. But now that we know, how absolutely insane the Republican Party is on this issue, now we move to the abject failures of Democrats. So I talked about this in my video the other day, but what exactly is the Democratic Party's strategy for pushing back against this overturning of Roe v. Wade? Well, number one, you could start with Obama, who we're going to get to here in a second. But first, let's just check in with the leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, and really mostly the face of the Democratic Party in a lot of different ways. But here from the Gravel Institute, they say already that Nancy Pelosi just sent out her first email fundraising off the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. So if you're wondering what the main Democratic plan is for this moment, it's this. I mean, they are literally going to use this as a wedge issue for the 2022 midterms. I honestly don't know the degree to which that could help them potentially in the midterms, but as I'm going to describe here in a second, based on what Joe Biden has said in the past, there's really no indication whatsoever that even if Democrats miraculously somehow hold on to a very slim majority in the House and the Senate, there's really no indication that the dynamic that we have right now in place with conservative Democrats blocking the ability to get rid of the filibuster and pass federal legislation to protect abortion rights, there's no indication that even if they pull off a miracle win in the 2022 midterms, that dynamic is going to change at all. But not only does she have fundraising emails to offer us in this moment, but she also apparently read a poem, I guess, in the last couple of hours here in the wake of this news coming out, basically. But let's go ahead and listen to what Nancy Pelosi's latest inspiring message is here for the American people.
I am personally overwhelmed by this decision. From time to time, I quote this poem by Ehud Manor. He's an Israeli poet. I met his wife when I've been in Israel. He says, "I have no other country, even though my land is burning. Only a word in Hebrew penetrates my veins, my soul, with an aching body and with a hungry heart. Here is my home. I will not be silent, for my country has changed her face. My country has changed her face. I shall not give up on her. I shall remind her and sing into her ears until she opens her eyes." Clearly, we hope that the Supreme Court would open its eyes.
Oh, cool. Okay, thanks, I guess. I mean, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this, Nancy? I mean, she's coming out here reading a poem and saying, well, we hope that the Supreme Court is going to open their eyes on this. What the fuck are you talking about? They just made the decision. There's nothing, there's no awakening that's going to be happening within the Republican Party or within the Supreme Court. Just absolutely nothing. I mean, this is the, same thing as in the wake of mass shootings, conservatives and many liberals alike coming out and offering thoughts and prayers. I mean, that's basically what this poem just was. But again, thank you, Nancy Pelosi, and also thank you for going out of your way to campaign for Henry Cuellar down in Texas against his progressive opponent, Jessica Cisneros, and making sure that the only anti-choice Democrat left within the House of Representatives hung on to his seat. So really appreciate that. It's very clear to the American people where your priorities are when it comes to Roe v. Wade. But I guess that's what they have to offer right now from Nancy Pelosi's position in the House of Representatives. Now we touch back a little bit on Obama, because he had something to say about this as well, and I'm sure that it was very inspiring and forceful, and that it's going to lead to some real action on this. So here from Barack Obama. He says today the Supreme Court not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent, it relegated the most intensely personal decision someone can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues, attacking the essential freedoms of millions of Americans. Damn, if only someone, I don't know, somebody in a position of power could have maybe done something about this, or, made it a priority to actually protect abortion rights at the federal level. What's that? Oh, whoops, here from 2009, Reuters article. Obama says abortion rights law is not a top priority. So that's kind of weird. So you were in power for 8 years as the president of the United States, some of which of that you had an outright supermajority control of Congress, and yet you came out and said that it was not a priority. So again, you want to look to some of the failures of the Democratic Party. Look at these people. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi fundraising off of this and offering thoughts and prayers. Look at Barack Obama, who was president of the United States for 8 years, had a supermajority, and straight up said that it was not a top priority for him. I guess he was too busy bailing out Wall Street bankers that obliterated the economy in 2008. But they're from Obama. We also, of course, had to hear from the president of the United States, Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. He said, quote, "I trusted Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh when they testified under oath that they also believed Roe v. Wade was a settled legal precedent, and I am alarmed that they chose to reject the stability the ruling has provided for 2 generations of Americans." So kind of weird how literally just a handful of the most conservative Democrats within the party were the only people in the country who didn't anticipate these 3 people, Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Kavanaugh, overturning Roe v. Wade. It was during the hearings that were going on at the time, you had Dianne Feinstein, who was coming out and saying, "Oh, I don't believe that Brett Kavanaugh or Amy Coney Barrett that they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade." Yeah, everybody else knew this, apparently, except for you idiots. I mean, this wasn't something that was difficult to predict. All 3 of those appointments that were made by Donald Trump came from the same exact goddamn think tank, the Federalist Society, who had explicitly political goals in mind when they were putting forward these appointments, one of which was overturning Roe v. Wade. So again, it's it's not some sort of a mystery as to how we got here, but what is Manchin's plan to protect abortion rights that he apparently supports? He said, quote, "I support legislation that would codify the rights of Roe v. Wade previously protected. I am hopeful that Democrats and Republicans will come together to put forward a piece of legislation that would do just that." And I honestly appreciate this journalist here. I think he's a NBC reporter, Sahil Kapoor, for giving us a reality check down here. They will not come together to do that. There is an approximately negative 500% chance that Democrats and Republicans are going to put forward bipartisan piece of legislation to enact Roe v. Wade at the federal level. And just as a reminder, the reason why he's pushing this in a bipartisan way is because Joe Manchin does not want to get rid of the filibuster, or even make an exemption for the filibuster. Even if you didn't want to completely get rid of it, you could make a carve out for the filibuster, specifically to protect abortion rights with a simple majority vote. But he apparently supports legislation that would codify Roe v. Wade, but doesn't support the one strategy that you could actually use in order to protect it at the federal level. So seems like kind of a contradiction there, but as pointed out here by Will Geeters, he seems like he's just fucking trolling us at this point. But it's not just him that is trolling the American people. We also have President Joe Brandon over here from CNN. Biden says the right to choose is fundamental, but is not prepared to call for a change in the filibuster to protect abortion rights. So this is what I was talking about earlier when Nancy Pelosi is sending out these fundraising emails, where was it, begging people for $15 donations so Democrats can hold on to their slim majorities in the House and the Senate. What exactly is the motivation for people to show up to vote for this party? If the idea is that you're going to protect abortion rights, well, if you somehow miraculously, again, this is a very tiny chance of happening, I guess it depends on how this news is interpreted by the American people, but if you manage to somehow miraculously hang on to the House and Senate by slim majorities, there's no chance you're going to get 60 senators in the Senate. So you're going to be left in the exact same position that you are right now, where you're going to have to make a carve out for the filibuster in order to protect abortion rights. And the president of the United States, the leader of your party, is not even in favor of doing that. So what exactly is the message to the American people to convince them that you even give a shit about protecting abortion rights if the leader of your party is not willing to use the one strategy he could use in order to get that done? I mean, again, the dynamic is not going to change. Democrats are not going to have 60 senators. So you are going to have to get rid of the filibuster, and Joe Brandon over here is not even in favor of doing that. And again, by the way, as a reminder, you have people like Nancy Pelosi who are now asking for money to protect abortion rights, who were openly campaigning for anti-choice Democrats against their progressive challengers. So, how the fuck does anybody take these people seriously? But obviously with the political system, as usual, completely failing the American people, we are left to turn to this. So here from NBC News Washington, we have a live feed here of protests erupting at the Supreme Court after the abortion case ruling. So, this is what it's going to take. We obviously can't count on Democrats. Obviously, Republicans are absolute demons. So we're left with direct action and, community organizing and I guess just trying to do our best in order to apply maximum pressure, not just on the Democratic Party, but also on the Supreme Court as an institution, which is not an institution that, in my opinion, deserves a single ounce of respect. I don't think that anybody should pretend as if the Supreme Court is like above partisan politics. These are all political actors. They were, unelected lawyers who were put there by presidents who largely didn't win the popular vote. They were put there explicitly for political reasons, and we are seeing the outcome of their, highly politicized ideology being put on full display right now. And so, you can't count on Democrats. You can't count on the independent sanctity of the Supreme Court or whatever the fuck that conservative and liberals are going to be trying to pushing today. So we shouldn't respect the Supreme Court, and I do think that a lot of our institutions would be better served if they were more fearful of the American people and the consequences of doing things that are overwhelmingly unpopular with the American people, and making decisions that, if you're being honest about it, are going to kill people. Again, you can't get rid of abortions by trying to criminalize it. You're only going to make it more dangerous for women to get abortions. It's not going to help anybody. And again, this is coming from the party who wants you to believe that the Republican Party that wants you to believe that they care about life, right? This is about protecting the kids. The same Republican Party where approximately 0 of them in the Senate voted to extend the child tax credit. Things like that. You can talk about the baby formula shortage, where Republicans were some of the only people who were voting against that. You could talk about things like universal health care, universal child care, universal family leave, paid, paternity leave as well. All of these different things that Republicans are consistently against. They don't give a single solitary shit about protecting children. They don't give a single solitary shit about protecting families in this country. This is just about controlling women's bodies. It's just pure and simple that, and specifically controlling some of the most marginalized communities within this country, those women's bodies, because again, the wealthy mistresses of a lot of these Republican politicians, they're still going to be able to go and get abortions, and trust me, they absolutely will be doing this. But again, it seems like this is the path forward in terms of how we can be the most optimistic about this. But I'll leave it off here with this. I would absolutely never, you guys know me, I would absolutely never suggest any subversive tactics are used in order to protest a violent and oppressive state. But here from Cool Ranch Zaku, I think he had a good take that is 100% accurate. He says, not for nothing, but this, rather than voting, is the sort of action that has ultimately secured popular rights for people in most every country throughout pretty much all of history. And he's pointing here to the protests that were happening down in Mexico and also in other countries within Latin America. But they got a tweet here saying, in Mexico, when abortion rights were up for debate, they marched to the presidential palace and attempted to burn it down. The Mexican government quickly decriminalized abortion nationwide soon after that. So again, absolutely would never in any way, shape, or form call for violence or anything like that, or any criminal activity. But it is still 100% true that the only way that we are going to be able to do this is through direct action, through using some of these tactics that we've seen applied throughout history and around the world even to this day, because clearly our institutions are failing us. The Supreme Court is failing us. The Democratic and the Republican parties are failing us. Our corrupt two-party system is failing us all the way top to bottom. These are not political institutions that you can count on, and so the only things you can count on are collective organization, supporting members within your community, and doing the best to engage in collective action to apply as much pressure as physically possible on these corrupted institutions.